Thank you for coming on to the Beyond the Mind podcast. A big part of our mission is just supporting people reaching their full potential. And a huge part of that is the journey to just understanding yourself and understanding how to work with yourself, your own brain, body, history, lived experiences, and then learning to just manage and manage and build a relationship with yourself so that you can just thrive and reach your full potential towards all of your goals. And so I'm so excited to introduce Steev Hodgson. Did I say your last name right? Hodgson?
You did. Yes,
okay.
You nailed it. Thank you.
I've never had to say it before. Steev, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and maybe take us a little bit through your professional and personal story.
First of all, Shraddha, thank you so much for having me here today. Just for everybody listening to this podcast and watching us today, just a little bit behind the scenes. I've known Shraddha through the ADHD community now for several years, and I've had the real pleasure to work with her as a coach and to help her and just kind of us be part of a community together. And your friendship and just knowing you means a lot to me. And just even seeing your own growth with your ADHD and just knowing what I know that you've had to go through. You're just a very inspirational person. And I just, again, from the bottom of my heart, I'm really grateful to be here today and just to also be your friend too. So thank you.
Thank you, Steev. That means a lot. And I feel the same way. I don't have it up yet, but every time I look at my wall of stickies, I feel your support of managing life.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So just my backstory a little bit, as you know, my name's Steev, but I'm someone who came to his ADHD diagnosis kind of later in life. Despite my youthful appearance, I'm old, I'm in my 50s. I was just kind of going through life and just, working in sales. I lived here in the Bay Area. I moved out here in 2008, just really for a job in tech sales. And, I really loved what I was doing because it's like I was in sales, so I was doing something different every day. Yeah. And I kind of got to this inflection point, and I know a lot of people kind of in our similar paths do, where, I could manage my day-to-day at a certain point, and then I just got to a point where I just couldn't anymore. And I think for me, the tipping point was right before the pandemic when my wife and I, we had our second child into the world. And it just, things became unmanageable there. And I just got to a point where I just could not turn my brain off. And I remember my wife saying to me at the time, she's saying, or we weren't even married at that point, but she said to me, you need to figure out a way, you got to figure this out. You got to get yourself together, because I would get to a point with jobs where it would be successful for a bit. And then I would get to a point where after a couple years, I would burn out. And then I would leave and I would go to something new, and then it would be great again. And then I would get burned out and, something would happen. So she's like, you got to figure this out. So I made an appointment, got my diagnosis for ADHD. I mean, it didn't surprise me because it's something I kind of figured that I probably had,
You went straight for an ADHD diagnosis, or you made an appointment with somebody general and then learned that?
Yeah, I think I went for, I had been working with therapy before at that point, and, they had said, yeah, you should probably look into that and, get medication. So I reached out to my healthcare at the time, and they suggested talking to a psychiatrist, and I did. It took me forever to get the appointment, like a couple of months. So now, thankfully, I think that's gotten better, but it does speak a lot to the world, and just that understanding of the neurodivergent mind just wasn't there 5-6 years ago. It's getting better now, but it's still, I think that just speaks to a lot of it. But so I got the diagnosis, and again, didn't surprise me. The more and more I've heard of ADHD kind of coming up, the more I realized that, yeah, this is probably what I'm dealing with. I mean, when I first heard about it in the 90s, ADD was a big thing. And I remember coaching, I was a swim coach at the time, and one of the students I was working with, he was telling me about it. And he said, it's attention deficit disorder. I can read the sports page of the newspaper, but I can't do my chemistry homework. And I'm like, well, that's life. That's like normal, right?
Yeah.
And, the more and more that things came along, I was like, okay, I probably have this. And so it didn't surprise me. I got the diagnosis. The first thing I tried was a prescription for Adderall.
Mhm.
And I thought, great, this is going to solve all my problems.
Yeah.
And
What'd you feel like when you tried the Adderall for the first time? What felt so
yeah,
great?
I hated it. I didn't like it at all. Maybe my brain more foggy than anything.
Okay.
Um, I remember though, and this is interesting. This is the interesting part of it. Why we think about like pharmaceuticals, we think that's going to solve a problem for us a lot of times. So I remember sitting there the night before I'm supposed to start taking it because again, it's a stimulant. You want to take it early in the day. I got the prescription like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm just sitting there like crying, thinking this is going to solve all my problems. Like
Okay.
this is what I need, and it didn't. I was disappointed. I felt like my brain was more foggy than anything, to be honest with
Okay.
you. And I didn't really know. I didn't really know like anything about ADHD. So I really decided to just kind of educate myself on ADHD. And that's when I came across a book called ADHD 2.0 by Dr. Ned Hallowell.
Mhm.
And it really, helped me understand that there's a whole lot more to this than just not paying attention to a boring presentation or to managing my calendar.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with the book, did you feel like now I have this better understanding of myself and like did you see a clarity of how to move forward in ways that were not medication focused?
Yeah, the book was like an eye-opening thing. And I don't know if you've had the experience with other things with ADHD. I'm reading the book and it's like the person's talking about me. And I'm thinking to myself, how do they know? How do they know this? And yeah, it was just eye-opening. And so much for the point that what I did was I got the audio version of the book and I would just put it on repeat. And I probably listened to the book. For about 2 years straight, I was starting my day every morning for 30 minutes. I would listen to a different section of the book and just pick up where I left off.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
I would probably get through the book each week, like once a week. I'd get through the book and then just, I did that for like 2 years.
Yeah. That's funny.
But
I do that with books too. I didn't know anybody else did that. Like, but I've done it with books like Essentialism or like the one thing, like where I'm like trying to really get better at a habit. And I'm like, we'll do that. Like just keep listening to the lessons over and over. I don't, is that an ADHD thing? Because I feel like other people will be like, you already read the book. Why do you need to go through it again?
yeah, well, also for me, I think also it's beyond it, just ADHD is dyslexia. So I
Okay.
also struggle with that, and I didn't know that either. And dyslexia is, a lot of times we think it's one thing, like, oh, you write your name backwards or you write letters, you mirror letters, as they call it.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's that we have a hard time getting the information. So it's like my brain, like, it needs information, but it also takes a hard time getting the information in.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it helped to kind of listen to it on repeat.
Okay.
Really helped me a lot. And so yeah, so that the book was a turning point. Also, he at the time, Dr. Hallowell, had a podcast, and he had this guest who was a life coach on, and that's where I started learning about it. Her name is Kristen Carter, who you know as well. And I thought to myself, wow, I want to join her program. And so that really kind of is also something that changed for me there. I joined her program.
Oh, that's awesome. And you were like an early member in her program, right?
Yeah, yeah, I was in there for about 3 years, but yeah, like 2021, I think she started in 2020, somewhere around the pandemic. So it
Okay.
was like not that far in. But yeah, I learned about it. I thought I'm going to join the program. And then for me, after being in the program for a little while, I decided I wanted to become a life coach and like do that and then start coaching people.
Oh, I love that. Was there like a specific moment that you were like, oh, I really like that was like that catalyst to I want to coach others, you know?
I think what had happened is when you're in a community, because that's the hardest thing that for people like us to realize is how much it means to be surrounded by other people who are going through the same thing and
Yeah.
how much that support can help. So I think at that time, there was a group on Slack. So Slack's a communication tool, and people were on Slack and they're posting up different things. And I remember I was dealing with something, and you and I have talked about this in our personal lives. I was actually dealing with a legal issue, and I remember it was like they had this channel called accountability, and so I put in there like, hey, I'm going to go to the court system this week and get it done.
Yeah.
And I remember someone commenting back to me on that, and I still remember their comment to this day. I remember the person's name, and it was really powerful. And I'm like, wow, I want to do this too. Like, I want to help people like someone just helped me, and like, how can I do that? And that's
Yeah.
how the idea to look at life coaching came about.
Oh, there's power in what you just said, because I think there's like this element of belonging and no longer feeling like isolated in in your troubles, right? And realizing like, no, I'm not alone. And look at how many great people I'm surrounded by who, also struggle with these, and there's like a really uplifting experience of that within the community. And then the other part where you talked about accountability, like especially when you're going through something like scary or stressful, I think one of the things that I love about being able to find like your tribe that can kind of understand your needs, right, is I think with accountability, it's like you can do it, right? It's not like there's no criticism in there. It's not like make sure you remember to do XYZ because you always forget stuff. It's like different when I think sometimes you're talking to a friend or somebody in your family and you're like, accountability, that might mean something different than somebody who understands ADHD and you're like, hey, I'm going to be really resisting this thing, so I'm putting it in here, and then getting somebody to cheer you
Yeah.
on, of being like, you can do it, like, it's
No,
so
totally.
embarrassing, I'd say, to ask for people who don't get that. I would say for someone who's more neurotypical, I don't know that I would say like, hey, I'm going to post this thing that I'm doing later this week just to hold myself accountable. I think they'd probably be like, what's the big deal? Just schedule it in and go.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I agree with you 100% on that. And that's the unfortunate part of us is like that's the great part about the community, about being a part of a community, is having that camaraderie, like, and people again like cheering you on, knowing like how hard it is to remember to, and especially in my case, what I was dealing with was like legal paperwork.
Yeah.
How hard it is to fill out like 50 forms of legal documents, and just the thought of just sitting down and write it seems easy, like, oh, just get it done, but it's so hard. That's
Yeah. And especially, I know you're going to talk about it, but some of the necessary skills like working with your emotions, right? And
yeah, yeah.
so I would love to maybe dive into that and understand yeah, I guess just this journey into coaching. And did you do Kristen's ADHD coaching program, or did you do a different one first? Or
Yeah, so good question. I actually did two coaching programs. I did so Kristen Carter, who runs a group called Focused. She also has the I Have ADHD podcast, and I've been fortunate enough to be on there as well. Um, she ran a coaching program, so I joined hers, and it's more like ADHD specific. But I also wanted to do one. There is something called the ICF, the International Coach Federation. And so that's the closest thing we have to like a governing body for coaching.
okay.
And so I did an ICF accredited coaching program too. And so that's where you get into more of a lot of structure. So all total, one was about a year. Kristen's was 6 months. So it's about a year and a half process to kind of get there
Okay.
and to get through the full certification. But yeah, did that. And yeah, for me, it's so funny that you just mentioned briefly emotions. That was something that I didn't really truly understand about ADHD, and
Yeah.
didn't understand how like maybe emotionally immature I had been before. And so that's one of the biggest things that I've gotten from getting coached and working with others too.
Yeah, I love that you just said that, because I feel like that's what I've learned in the last couple of years too, is I always thought I was a pretty mature person, but very emotionally immature, like very, very much so. Both in the context of being comfortable with your emotions, learning how to use them, like, but in engaging with other people, and I don't just, to me, it's fascinating now because it's like the way that I move about life is so different than the way that I moved about life even just 2 years ago in emotional maturity, And so, yeah, so tell me a little bit more about how that shows up in coaching, especially when you're interacting with somebody who might seem like they're really great on paper and have that,
Yeah.
like intellectual maturity, or if that's the right word, and then recognizing, that there's an emotional immaturity here that needs to be, strengthened.
I think the one thing to keep in mind too with coaching, and I think where the real powerful thing is, if you're watching this and that the person on the other end, the coach, isn't going to judge you. They're going to be, probably sit right there with you and help you as well. And so I think the first time when I went through, so there's a modality or a methodology that I use called Spark, which is a way to do intentional thinking. There's a very famous life coach named Brooke Castillo. She started out calling it the model.
Okay.
And then Kristen Carter, who we the aforementioned as well, she has something called a steer map, and they're all kind of similar. But if you go through the different processes, I'll use mine, Spark, which is, okay, what's the situation I'm in? What's that thought or perception that comes up? And then my A in Spark is affect, like how does that affect your emotions? Because the emotions, that controls everything. That controls everything. My own personal example that I use for clients is I had a flat tire on my bicycle, and I like to do 30 minutes of bike riding or some sort of exercise every day. And so, like, my first emotion was like, I'm frustrated. So that led to my actions of me driving over to the REI and just running in and grabbing one, bike tube, and not looking at the big picture, because we just get so caught up in that one thing. Like, I'm frustrated that I have to do this. I want to get in and get out quick. And it's like I had that tunnel vision, that one track mind,
Yeah.
and we don't think about the big picture. So in my case, with the bicycle example, I ran into the REI. Well, I'm frustrated because I know it's a Friday afternoon. It's a beautiful day. Someone's going to be in there talking at the register. And everything happened exactly how I thought. I got there. One person was working the register, and they were taking so long because the person was asking them about camping advice and whatever. So I'm frustrated already. So I just run in, grab one bicycle tube, come back, start pumping it up. And because I didn't look ahead, there was a small little hole in the tire itself. And what would happen was the rubber of the tube would expand and just pop. And so now I had to go back to the REI bike shop again. Eventually, I just brought the bike with me and had them do it. But again, that's the sort of thing. If I would have thought ahead and thought more bigger picture, I could have saved myself that extra trip to
Yeah.
the bike shop.
So I want to click down a little bit on Spark and the other models, the steer model, because like I know the foundation under all of these come with that emotional maturity of understanding that your thoughts, emotions, and actions are all intertwined, right? And I think this is the same. I actually don't know because CBT therapy works off of that too, and they call it the CBT triangle. And these are all like, to me, I've seemed similar, maybe a little bit more like action driven. I don't know. Can you speak to that at all? Because yeah, I don't like. I feel like, well, first, like for me, just learning a few years ago, like, oh, I can decide to change a thought. Like, who would have known you could actually decide to change your thoughts? And that's not like necessarily the same thing as like toxic positivity of just think positive, right? Like using these types of frameworks is actually like a very solution oriented approach versus toxic positivity, of just think positively could almost be like ignoring the problem and just pushing it to the side. Yeah, I'm wondering if you could click down on that from
Yeah, no,
your
absolutely.
perspective.
And you're right. It is a cognitive behavioral therapy tool. I rename it in my things in my practice, so it's not as like not too inside like therapeutic. So I call it creative tool, like creative brain tools is what I call it instead of
Okay.
CBT. I call it the creative brain tools. But that's exactly what it is. And the idea is, how do we think more intentional, and like how can you work in a more intentional manner? And you're right, that reframe of questions is really the way to do it, because it's also enlightening and just empowering too, because you think about, in many ways, you're stuck in that kind of mode. And then because there's only, when you have that other voice telling you like, hey, this is okay, well, what is the story, what's the story, and then what's the story you're telling yourself? And when you realize that those are probably two different things, that's just empowering. So that, like you said, changing that thought, like, let's change that thought. Like, here's the thought is that, okay, I have to drive over to the REI and just go in and get that. How about if my thought was, why don't I bring my bicycle over and just have them do it? Or something like that, like a
Yeah.
reframe question. Or maybe I don't need to do a bicycle ride today. Maybe I do something else. I go for a walk.
Yeah.
Um, but just that because a lot of times we think we just have that one track mind, like we have to do this to get here, and that doesn't
Yeah.
always have to be the case.
Yeah. And I mean, building new habits, especially when you're trying to change your thought patterns and like these ingrained mindset, is so hard, right? And I think learning these frameworks has been amazing for me. And I've tried to use them with my kids sometimes when there's something going on, and it has been like really surprising that even, I'm thinking a few years ago with my son, like there was something that he came up with that was like frustration with the dog, and then we did this. I did the CBT triangle with them just because it's only like 3 things to write down versus more. Um, but it was amazing, because like he could see how he could change his like framing, and I think there was something about like owning his own responsibility, as a dog owner, that he got out of it. And so these tools can be like really powerful. Um, Before we dive into what I know you've done to make that easier for people, I guess I want to understand a little bit more about your experience coaching. Yeah, just tell me more. Like, has it been fulfilling? Do you see people have huge transformations, small transformations? Like, uh, what kind of clients do you usually work with? Just tell me a little bit more about the coaching world and your
Yeah,
experience.
the coaching world has been extremely fulfilling for me. I love it. I love having that, being that sort of extra voice, to have someone look at, like, kind of look at that bigger picture, and ask that question, ask the next question of the
Yeah.
person. And I can't tell you just like how satisfying it is to come off of a session and just feel like that maybe you didn't help them exactly with their problem, but you helped them look at it in a different direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing for non-ADHDers to understand, is that like coaching isn't necessarily about solving someone's problem. It's giving them the tools to really solve the problem on their own, and giving them the tools to just empowering them to look at that. And I'll never forget, I one coaching experience. I was working with someone who was a parent, and this individual said, and I don't mind sharing this because they shared it publicly as well. And I won't go into all the details, but they said to me, one of the things they struggle with is they worry that their child is going to get into a problem that the parent, cannot solve for them.
Hmm.
And I just said, you just nailed it. What I struggle with first with coaching is I feel like I needed to solve the client's problems, but I don't. And I said, and that's what you need to think about that. And this individual just thanked me so much. And about a week later, they sent me a personal like email. to let me know how much that meant to them. And it's just moments like that that I'll just cherish forever. And again, it's getting to meet people, and just kind of meet them where they're at, and then help them understand there's more to the problem probably than they're saying. It's just it's such a great. And as far as like the dopamine fix that we as ADHDers need,
Yeah.
nothing beats it.
So you said something about coaching, and then you said for non-ADHDers to understand, and there was something that clicked with me, and you're speaking through it, but I guess I want to draw it out a little bit more, because everything you just said there about not solving the problem for somebody and helping them think about it differently and solve themselves. You and I both know as late diagnosis, neurodiversities, that when you don't know what might be different, about you, and you kind of are like walking around with this like secret that you're trying to discover, but also hide at the same time, like there is a complete lack of, not complete lack, there's a lot of self-trust that
Yeah.
just is not exercised, right? And especially, I would say with neurodiversities, if the ways that you're different are more unique than those around you, the the habitual pattern is to then look to somebody else to say, what's the right thing to do? What should I be doing? I don't know why I'm doing something wrong. Somebody else tell me, right? And that becomes a very slippery slope. So what you're talking about is like what I hear you saying is actually like two different things. There's the like, here's the problem that somebody like comes to you with, right?
Hmm.
And like, and I know you've coached me before, but everything that you talked about there then of helping them reshift their mindset and look at it a different way. I mean, the art of coaching, especially for somebody who has dealt with constantly being misunderstood or misjudged and all that, like you go into layers of like, first of all, there's compassion, and I think you do a really great job of like, I'm really sorry you're going through this, like you're not alone. This is just a tough situation. I remember, I think there was a conversation last year with my daughter's health, and you just held space for it. I'm just so sorry. This is so hard. And I know I was in like, here's my problem. Let's get to the solution. And I hadn't held space for myself for a little while in that. So that's so important. And then the art, I would say, of what you're doing and then helping them look at it in a different way involve, like, can you go into that, like the building of the self-trust within that model?
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And I always try to remind someone as soon as we start coaching, and they kind of go into what they're dealing with or what they're kind of going through. And I always try to take a step back at that time and just preach that self-compassion, because I never thought about that before. I never thought about my own self-compassion. So I tell
Yeah.
people, hey, give yourself 8 hugs a day. Like lean into that self-compassion and grace for yourself, because chances are if you saw someone walking down the street with a broken arm or they were on crutches, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, can I help you? Can I open the door for you? We all do that, but because we can't see like what we're dealing with here, we don't give ourselves that grace and that compassion. And we think we just need to move on to like, we don't give ourselves that grace. So I
Yeah.
try to make sure I remind people of that. Like, hey, give yourself that grace. It's okay. It's okay that that bill was late. It's okay that this didn't happen. And what can we learn from it? Like what can we do? How can you do that? And it's like,
Yeah.
but forgive yourself, because I can't tell you how hard I was on myself. And you really touched on it when you said about like that late diagnosis, because I was someone, once I did get the diagnosis, I felt great. Like, oh my gosh, there's this just joy. Like now I can control my brain as opposed to it
Yeah.
controlling me. And then that shame and guilt over here. Why did it take me 48 years to figure this out?
Yeah.
And so it's just making sure you remind people of that like, hey, give yourself that grace and self-compassion, and then let's see, okay, what can we then do to, forgive yourself, and then what can we do now to sort of switch from that moving forward, like let's look at it from a big picture standpoint.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's a very delicate art, and it just takes some time, to kind of exercise that muscle as a coach. But yeah, when you do work with clients, there's just nothing more fulfilling than that.
Oh, it's amazing. And as you've been coaching, you noticed a gap, right? Of like support that your clients needed outside of the coaching sessions. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so thank you. One of the things that I noticed in talking to clients, and maybe you've seen this yourself too, is just how often I would hear, well, I need to manage my schedule, and I'm looking for an app to do this, or I'm looking for an app to do that, or I'm looking for, we all want that like silver bullet that's going to cure us. Like I was with medication, and I
Yeah.
talked about earlier. We all want that one thing. So I thought to myself, I would love to be able to give someone these tools, these like coaching tools, and like have it in their pocket. So give them a coaching session in their pocket. Maybe again, not solve all their problems, but give them a chance to go through like a spark process, like on their phone. You're on a train, you're on your way I live in the Bay Area. I'm taking the train into San Francisco. I might not have connectivity, but I can pull up my phone and do something on an app and have it walk me through different sessions. So I created an app that I'm calling Dose. Dose stands for Daily Organization, Structure, and Execution.
Uh-huh.
And I really want to make it sort of the ADHD, just your ADHD command center. I call it my operating system for ADHD, but that's what I want it to be, is sort of like that command center for someone. And so we've added in tools like Spark that I talked about. Again, that CBT methodology. I have that. Also emotional regulation, a process that I call WAVE, which is walk away, because sometimes, you're stuck in that rumination phase. I mentioned Dr. Hallowell's book. He talks about that in there.
Yeah.
You're in that ruminating phase, but sometimes the best thing to do is like take a time out, walk away. Let's like accept where we're at emotionally, I'm frustrated or whatever. Let's, validate it, and then, maybe execute a plan to help you, whether it's, taking a 5-minute walk, or just taking a moment, listening to your favorite song, whatever. That's another part of it that I have in there. So around emotional regulation. Real quick, just to kind of segue into emotional regulation, how important it is. We also don't understand how much in our body that our emotions kind of sit. So if you're watching this and you're a person with ADHD, or just in general, like a lot of times, like for me, when I think of an emotion, it'll sit on my chest like a piano. I'll hear people tell me, clients, that like they feel it in the back of their neck or their shoulder blades, or maybe a punch to their solar plexus. It probably sits in you somewhere. And the more and more that I've learned about emotional regulation and how big it is, like there's certain things. I used to get this cramp in my leg, and I remember getting it when I was 16 years old, getting ready for a big swim meet competition. And I just thought like, oh, maybe I'm dehydrated, or maybe I need some potassium or whatever. And so I would try all those things, and maybe I did. But the more and more in my adult life, I would still see this pop up. And because of my own emotional regulation, I've seen that it's actually anytime that I'm stepping up to perform, like I was going on a big podcast with hundreds of thousands of people, and it flared up. And I'm like, what is this? And the more I did that work, I realized that that's what it is. So emotional regulation is just huge. And I have that built into my app Dose. There's also something called a popcorn feature. Our brains can be like popcorn machines where there's just ideas going on and on and on.
Yeah.
And what do? We pull out our phone, we put it in our notes section of our iPhone or
Yeah.
Android, And next thing you know, your notes section's like this.
So
And
now I'm really glad
yeah,
that we recorded it when it came up, because we could actually like plug that part in and then just do that script of you showing the features. So it's really cool. But I like, just so you don't have to go over what you already demoed there on the app, when I look at all of those features that are available, and I mean, all of these skills, right, of like changing your thought patterns and learning to emotionally regulate, and even just kind of like tracking how your day to day is going. One, I mean, I love you demoed the app, and I love it because I don't think people, I don't think, I don't want to generalize, but I don't know how many people really have to worry about like, is this an app that I can use? Like if you're somebody who gets really overly stimulated, like you're going to have to go into an app and really be conscious of like, can I handle this user experience, right? If you're dyslexic, you need to like go into an app and look at, what features does it have that might make it easy for you, so it's not creating friction by just using it. And I know for me, like there's so many things that like when I'm using an app, I do need it to be like really clean and easy and intuitive, to just not feel like I've created overwhelm by using it. And so I think you've done an amazing job with like still an early version of your app. It's so clean and intuitive, and there's so many features in there.
thank you.
Why, I guess I look at that and I'm like, I would recommend it to anyone looking to build those skills, whether or not they have ADHD or not. So yeah, I don't know. Tell me a little bit more about like because really all of those tools are beneficial for everybody, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I call it the ADHD Command Center, but anyone can use it. Let's be
Yeah.
real. The other thing, so by the way, feel free, if you're listening to this podcast, go check it out. It's a website called Get Dose, DOSE, getdose.app. Anyone can access it. We have there's a free trial on there right now. We'll also come up with a promo code for this podcast, and
Awesome.
you can get an additional 30 days for your trial. So we'll do that. We'll put that in the notes here. But so getdose.app, please check it out. But yeah, the other thing about building this is not just that I saw a gap like in this industry and people asking for something like I wanted an app that's going to win my counter, that's going to help me with these emotional regulation tools, that's going to do that. I even have something called the RSD meter in there, and then a reminder for late morning meditation.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've so I released the first version of it about 4 months ago and just been kind of tweaking it since then, talking to my ADHD clients, getting some advice from them. But the other thing about this that's just a pure passion project for me is I worked in the tech world basically my whole career.
Yeah.
And this is now combining that. So it's like these two things that, ADHD is now such a big part of my life. And it's combining my entire career, which was working in the tech world and tech sales and just building that. And I've had a lot of fun with it. Now the hard part is getting people interested, users and investors. But we'll get there. And that's my plan, is just to build something that everyone would want to use.
And so do you want to talk about the other hard part, like where you are right now and searching for
Yeah. So
we'll just say we're in early November right now.
It's early November,
so it might be outdated.
so I'm actually looking for a co-founder. When you're working with investors, they're very wary of a solo founder. So I'm looking for a co-founder, and something I alluded to earlier where I said neurotypicals might not necessarily understand certain things. So I've built this tool again to give that sort of teach the person to fish and not necessarily give them a fish, and give them those tools to empower themselves. So recently I had a conversation with someone, and we walked through the RSD meter, and this person is neurotypical, so nothing against them, but they're like, oh, we need to solve.
Can you describe RSD? Because I know you've used the acronym twice.
Yeah.
Rejection,
Sorry.
sensitivity, what is it?
Dysphoria. Yeah. So rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria. That is, you apply for a job and you don't get it. You're in a relationship and your boyfriend or girlfriend breaks up with you, or you're at work and your boss, gives you one criticism. For whatever reason, us with ADHD, and Dr. Russell Barkley was a big pioneer in the RSD research. RSD just is that rejection. It hits us 10 times worse than it does a neurotypical person.
Mhm.
And it just, for whatever reason, we remember the negative. I would used to get coaching after I would do a coaching session, I would get a feedback form. And the person might write like 99 things that they liked about our session. They would write that one wrong thing, and I would remember that. I
Yeah.
would still remember that. Thankfully, I don't think you filled out a form because I don't remember any negatives from from working with you. But anyhow,
Yeah,
it's
I
just
don't think I had any
fine.
negatives. So I know I filled out some forms, but I don't think I gave any negatives. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. But yeah, we hang on to that, and that's the RSD.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to incorporate that rejection sensitivity, and then how do we cope with that? So in the search for a co-founder, I was walking this person through rejection sensitivity, and they were saying, well, why don't we just incorporate this with AI and just have the AI give the person the answer? And I thought about it, and actually thought about it overnight, and just some more, and then I realized that no, that doesn't, that's giving someone the answer. Let's help them empower themselves. What did I do the last time I did
Yeah.
this? What did I do the last time I applied for that job and didn't get it? Well, you know what? I practiced self-compassion. I took a moment and I did some self-care. I went on, a 15-mile hike, whatever. If we could store what those coping mechanisms were, and now all of a sudden kind of go back there and look at it again, and maybe a year later, like, wow, this really helped me the last time.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm struggling to find a co-founder. I've decided I want, and I definitely heard from a lot of folks recently. I put up an ad and I got like 100 applications for this role. And I did get some handwritten letters of people that do have ADHD. So I realized that I do want to bring on someone to work with me who has ADHD, because I want to build a tool for ADHD by ADHDers.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do.
Oh, that's so awesome. And because you mentioned AI, and I have this belief that like those of us that have had these like missed neurodiversities, or just I guess anybody who is maybe in a minority group that has had to like learn, like really practice discernment and how they have to move about their day to day and understand a little bit more nuances of different situations. Like I think we're actually pretty well primed for the age of AI, because like we've just been super developing this like critical thinking skill and understanding the nuances of stuff that AI will never be able to replicate, and so I think that there's like going to be
Totally.
a value for like a diverse set of brains to really be able to like now go in and solve different problems um, with a lot of the more like tactical mundane stuff like just offloaded to AI. So I'm
Yeah.
when I think about that, that's where I become really even more passionate about like how amazing for somebody to be able to like go on the journeys that we've been on, even no matter how late you are, because I'm a late diagnosis, you're a late diagnosis. And I know we're both now building in areas that we're so passionate about and we think is so important, because like, even though we've talked about hardships, there's an incredible joy of being like, oh yeah, this was a strength of mine that I never knew I had, right? This is something that I can offer, and a more freedom, I think, to move about the world, and when I look at dose, like the app, like then I think about, okay, for somebody who is now doing that work and like wants to grow faster, because I know for me, I feel like I have to make up for lost time. Like I don't want to waste
Yeah,
it. Like
totally.
if I can do 3 updates, great. Like let's do it, and it's no longer out of shame and punishment judgment. It's like now it's fun, and so what I'm excited about that is that you're making those tools available, and there was a feature that you demoed where it can work complementary to therapy, not in replacement of therapy, right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yep.
And you've been using it with clients already. So how
Yeah, so
you
a
found that?
couple things that we have. Oh, I'm sorry. So
No,
didn't mean to talk
and
over
just
you there.
because we're a little bit over, do you still have like 10 minutes?
Yeah, I probably need to go here in a minute or two. I do have another call to jump on, and I
Okay, that's
left it
okay.
a couple minutes late.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all right, let me reset and I'll get back to answering your question. So yeah, I am, to use this in conjunction with therapy, I recommend this with clients because we can have them, and a few things that we're going to add to dose is a share with coach feature. So you could go ahead and fill out this form, fill out like go through one of the sessions, like a spark or rejection sensitivity, and share it with your coach. So then they know what to expect, if you're coming into a session and like, hey, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And also complimentary, I want to integrate with like Slack channels to be able to share with the community and bring that out as well for folks. And so yeah, those are some of the things I want to incorporate.
Well, Steve, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to get to try the product myself. I'm so excited for having you on the podcast and being able to share it with our audience. And thank you so much for the discount code you're going to provide. I know I'll follow up with you and get all of the information about coaching and dose and everything for the show notes. But this has been so much fun. Like, thank you so much for joining and sharing. And I'm excited to use the app and help get more people to use the app, because I know it's going to be a huge benefit. Like, I'm so amazed with what you built. It's really an amazing product. This is coming from
Thank you so
former
much.
product managers built products, right? Like, you've really done a solid job on that. It's so amazing.
Thank you so much, Rana. Again, your friendship means so much to me, and I'm so thrilled. I love what you guys are doing at Beyond the Mind, and so we'll use a discount code. We'll call it Beyond.
Okay.
So let's use that. I'll add that. We'll add that in the show notes. But yeah, so get Dosed on app. When you go in there, if you go to subscription, it'll say enter promo code. Just put in Beyond, and then you'll get a free trial. So we'll do that. So we'll give it 60 days for everybody. So
Awesome.
yeah, thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks, Steve.